I want to explore an aspect of this whole process with my parents, with Lazarus, with Hai, because it's a similar experience. There's a continuous sense of panic, fear, trauma, betrayal, anger, dissatisfaction, panic. I can feel it right now with the terror of disappearing, the terror of being judged, the terror I've been enjoying this is a little meta window here. I've been enjoying a little bit of Ram Dass and Eckhart Tolle, and of course I have thousands of hours of listening and working and channeled workshops and this and that, and none of that goes away. And then I've also been mostly looking at my own experience, because I grew up in a world in which the ego was always referred to as negative. Lazarus has the term the negative ego. The ego, don't be so egotistical, blah, 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 blah. And I look at it, just the opposite. I look at it as God got it covered. I mean, who can be so arrogant to think that God needs rescuing or whatever? These channeled entities, Lazarus says that they are the highest resonance to ever touch the planet, and their whole existence is kind of equivalent to being in orgasm all the time with themselves and other consciousness. It's doesn't sound like someone who needs my help or that I need to worry about. Lazarus has said the earth can take care of itself. We need to look at our thing, and probably the self of the earth, with all of its 5 billion history from dust to this and that, there may be cyclical waves that, it's my definition that says if the earth is wiped out to the Stone Age with nuclear holocaust, that, dear me, the earth is in trouble. But really it's human beings that are in trouble if we wipe each other out. 1 billion years doesn't seem to be all that much of a time in the earth, and it only took about 62 million years for most of what we know as life today to be here again. And all of this seems to point to, screw this absurd idea that the ego has to take care of God, angels, channeled entities, higher dimensions, the planet, blah, 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 blah. It's rather, wow, this frail, very precariously constructed sense of individual identity, which it's not even clear that animals have so much of a sense of individual identity compared to their herd mentality and the way many of them behave, or that they're even conscious of I in the way that we are. So we're like this precarious edge. And if I'm to believe anything and pay attention to other dimensional experiences that are beyond this sense of ego, then there are bigger parts of us that presumably I don't have to worry about my soul, my higher self, my angels, my God. There's this bizarre twist in which the only part of us and the only part of the universe that I can see that really needs help is the ego. Animals are not, campaigning to keep existing and all. They have their instincts and all that. But one of my teachers, John Hoyle, who also didn't help me see anything about trauma, but we did some good work for a bit, said that he used to find, eating meat and killing and all that in the animal world be this big horror, and then one day he found himself in the body of an animal being devoured, and realized that there was this most beautiful surrender, that despite the instinct of the chase and the instinct of the run from the instinctual brain of survival, the fight and the flight paired together in the hunter and the hunted, that as the predatory animal met and sunk its claws and its teeth, there's this beautiful surrender. You set me free. And while the body twitches and all that, the consciousness was this wonderful dance, and that's what it's like to be an animal, being freed by the grace and the gift of the predator of death. And from that point, his whole experience around eating meat and all that changed. But we certainly don't have that. I haven't been thanking the high facilitators for every time I wake up and realize I nearly got in an accident, I nearly killed this person and that. I don't say, thank you, my predators. Thank you for bringing me to this precipice, and maybe now is a great time to leave. No. I'm an ego. I'm a human ego. So I'm furious. You fucking bastards. You have no idea. You don't even know what you don't know. If I'm nearly dying, who else is nearly dying? What about that person there? What would happen to their mother if they just... I am not at peace with this. Which brings me back to this point, that I've never felt it's appropriate for egos to be harassing egos, to give egos a hard time and get rid of egos. I'm like, screw that. Let's flip things around. God if you're any use, angels if you're any use, souls if you're any use, earth if you're any use, divine dimensions if you're any use. Let's pour some love. Human beings, if you're any use at all, love your egos. Help them, care for them. They're fragile, hopelessly separated and limited from one another, from themselves, from the ecology. It's like they're more cancerous relative to, well, I don't even know if I'd see it like that, because that's bashing the ego again. And it's just tiring. And of course, who gets upset when you complain about something? Another ego. So in other words, my feeling is, fuck it. If it doesn't help the ego to survive, feel good about itself, ameliorate fear and terror, I'm not interested. And the most backward thing of all is the parental wound being magnified out into the cosmos, where because parents use and prey on their children, basically feed, emotionally and mentally, if not physically, cannibalize their children. Use them, feed them, manipulate them, and position them for their agendas. I watched my parents. This is not love. It's not service. It's usury. It's betrayal. It's abuse. So because children grow up in that environment, because I grew up in that environment, and the message is clear, you are to be used. You are to be used. Now it gets subtle because no parent wants to say, yeah, I have children so that I can cannibalize them. First of all, I have children so I can look like an adult or look like that. I don't even know what love is, but I want to look like I'm responsible and a woman isn't a real woman. So I have the children to serve this sociopathic culture because it's the same pattern. The individual serves the culture that cannibalizes the individual. The child serves the parent that is cannibalized by the parent. And then we project it up, and it's like, how can I be of service to God? How can I, save God or make my angels happy or not disappoint my soul? And And it's like, fuck you, soul, God, whatever. I mean, have you got anything helpful? I mean, could you speak English? You can't? Well, tough, get out of here. If you can't bring yourself in your infinite wisdom to even speak English, something, I'm surrounded by idiots, and I'm one of them. And we've managed English. If you can't manage it, get out of here. We don't need your signs in teapots and leaves, just get out. so just, I don't want to hear, and I don't want to hear from other egos, don't ruin this and that and the other. So this has been a lot of my backlash. It's like, get out of my hair, all you, quote, higher beings that can't do anything useful. And let me get on with trying to be kind to this ego and other egos to the best of my ability. And I love other egos. It's like, and I'm sick of the whole new age, self-pity is bad, self-importance bad, boasting is bad. I'm sick of it, absolutely sick of it. That sounds like boasting. You don't want to be a boaster. It's like, why not? Boasting is fun. I love boasting. Let's have some boasting. Anyone for boasting? Let's have some more boasting. I'm amazing at this. I just did this. Aren't I wonderful? Yes, you're wonderful. Yeah, and you're wonderful too. And let's have some boasting. It lifts the energy. Who for? The ego. That's what I'm dealing with. Lazarus or whatever, who's in constant orgasm, doesn't sound like he needs an energy lift. Nor is he taking any responsibility for the impact of all the people stressing over their lousy techniques. I'm not doing this technique. It's like, fuck it. That's Lazarus's fucked up technique. Give it back to, let him deal with it. This isn't working. Give it to Lazarus. It's his technique. What works for you? How about a pity party? How about this? How about listening and talking about all your gripes and horrors and just being loved? What would be the most loving thing for you, the ego? You, the individual self. Because that's the only part in existence that I know of that needs help, that needs love, that needs help, that needs lots of love, that needs care, etc., etc. So this is one just a little insight into, it's a little bit of how psychology works. It's a little bit of my own counterphobic. If something says this is scary, You don't want to be too egotistical. Fuck that, let's be egotistical. I mean, so this, but this also, what I'm partly addressing here is the fact that whatever you attack, particularly, like, as far as I can tell, unless you want to die today, you need the ego. It's just a lens. It's the memory and the experience of the self that has looked at the reality you're in through the measuring and observing devices of the senses within your body. So this is, of course, a very, very limited device. It's like taking a movie, if that was the totality of things, and bringing a tiny little spotlight and kind of traveling and giving a consciousness, an ability to travel around inside that movie and see, this is reality, this is reality, this is reality, and that's the consciousness of the ego. And when you're totally focused in at that, microcosmic, level, everything else stops to exist. In a very good movie, it does. And so that's the sense of the ego. And it's like, oh, well, then it doesn't matter. It's like, fuck that. To the ego, it matters. To the ego that's in a horror movie, moving along, and then this, and then this, and that's all that exists. That's the only thing that matters. To the person who isn't in the body, oh, it's just a movie. I'm not even in there. I'm not paying much attention. I'm off on other things. I've got hundreds of movies. But to the ego, in that movie, it fucking hell matters. The trauma music, dun 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 dun, I'm gonna be eaten by a shark. There's a consciousness somewhere on this planet, many of them, feeling that exact way. Dun 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 dun. I felt that way the last couple of years. My facilitators are abandoning me, this and that. I'm going to be punished for talking about it. It felt absolutely horrible. And that's what matters. Oh, no, that's just the limited ego, so it doesn't matter. Fuck it. If it doesn't matter, die. I mean, you don't waste your time consuming all this energy, blah, 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 if it doesn't matter. Fuck it. Get out of here. If it matters at all, to my sense, it matters as a chance to learn how to take care of something that fragile, to learn how to love something that separate, that fragile, that dissociated from the whole rest of self and selves and the whole ecological thing. I mean, we have this sense that we're separate. Of course, we're not. Atomically, molecularly, biologically, environmentally, there is nothing separate about us. Where does the light I need come from? Out there. Where does the food I need come from? Out there. Where does the breath that keeps me alive every 14? Out there. This isn't separate. The amazing thing is this consciousness perception of separation, that this is me, and that's not me. And yet, I just breathed it in, and now it's me. I mean, this is a joke. We're separate. We're part of this ecology, and we're feeling preyed upon, and we're feeling preyed upon by all these, different things, many of them human, and yet the bottom line seems to be, let's care for this identity. Whatever it is that's manufactured, however divergent, however crazed, however imbalanced, however thing, can we care for this here? And if we're not going to do that, it's like, if we're not going to do that, return, as soon as our bodies die. I've watched a wonderful video recently, and I've decided I'm going to be buried in a wonderful hole, where without any of this nonsense around cremation and this and that and the other, which puts all kinds of fumes and chemicals up in the air and uses all kinds of energy and doesn't let the earth receive our beautiful nutrients. I mean, this is nitrogen and phosphorus and all that, and after all that we've pulled out of the earth, to give something back, to in dying say thank you to the earth, to be a part of a sustainable ecology, to at least give a few 100 pounds of organic compost back to this ecology that we are a part of, despite the fact that we have fanatically overdeveloped the mindset of our separation as our preparation for industrial ecologies that are, questionably in sync with a great deal of the ecology. And so that's been my framework. Let's just do it directly and calmly, and let's do it with balance. So when I do a pity party, that's, I had a great friend, because not many people will do this. It's like, what do you mean? We're supposed to be nice to ourselves and feel good. Isn't it annoying when someone does these pity party thing like, oh, traffic and this and that. Well, do you want some commiseration? No. I need to be positive, So, okay. So, and then this. It's like, would you like some commiseration about that? No. I'm fine. And then there's this. It's like, give me a break. Let's indulge in this self-pity. So I have a pity party, it's like, traffic was terrible. Poor you. How terrible. Your whole time is wasted by all these idiots in traffic. Poor you. You're trying to get where you want to go, and these other fucked up cars, what do? They just get in your way. You got these whole freeways, you could just be zipping along there happily, and yet everyone has to go somewhere right when you want to go somewhere, and it's ruined. Poor you. Yeah, that's exactly right. Of course it is. Idiots, they don't think, I want to get to my friend's house in 15 minutes. No, they're all thinking about themselves. Yes, those selfish bastards thinking about themselves. Yes, and what else? Well, then there's my mother. Does she send out a psychic vibe and say, I'm just about to pour myself a cup of tea? Let me wait to harass my child again? No, she waits for just the moment. You've got it all planned, the phone rings, and you're startled out of your reverie, and then, does this and that. No, she's ruining your whole life. Yes, exactly. She always waits till I'm right doing this thing. Yes, and that's terrible, you poor thing. Yes, it is. You do that for 30 minutes, you have a ball, and you take turns. Okay, now it's my turn. Fucked up high facilitators, you tell them what you need, so of course they do the exact opposite. It doesn't work. Of course it doesn't work, because it's the exact opposite of what you need. Then they complain that it's taking too much time. Of course it's taking too much time, because it takes a very long time to cure someone from flu by giving them massage. It takes a long time. Little vitamin D3 would do the trick, but it's and there are those idiots, and they call themselves love and and then they do this and they do. Isn't it a joke? It's hilarious, and as long as the ego feels better, as long as the ego gets the medicine, and someone in the whole fucked up ecosphere actually is caring about this trapped, fragmented, traumatized, terrorized sense of separate identity that could be wiped out any day. See, the self, the soul, the spirit, God got us all that is, the earth, they all live on when I get shot. They all live on when I get run over by a car. They all are busy enjoying their existence while I'm stuffing my face because I'm so terrified with dread and no one will talk to me. They're all doing just fine. I don't have to worry about them. And I don't have to serve the, I'm going to get in trouble. Again, parents, that's right. We live in a fucked up culture where once you're abused, if you're upset about it and voice your upset, you get in trouble. I mean, how dumb is that? Absolutely dumb. Well, it's true. They're not in that reality. You are. But the biggest kind of opening around all this is that any consciousness that's bigger than human empathizes, loves, accepts, doesn't judge, doesn't waste its time punishing. It takes a lot of energy to punish someone. Lots of energy. The only reason to spend all that energy is when you are in a codependent relationship, which we are as human beings, in case you haven't noticed. If someone is terrified by something you're doing, they can come over and mess up your reality. Oh, how am I going to stop you from doing that? Well, I've got to do this. It's a codependent reality. That's the technical term for living in a world where we have impact on one another. It doesn't matter how well you drive. If I'm not driving very well, you die. It's that simple. It doesn't matter whether you finish your antibiotic course. If you don't care enough about some struggling mother who has to decide with 5 pesos whether to feed her daughter that morning or buy another round to finish the antibiotic course when the symptoms have subsided after 3 doses. If you don't care about that mother, she develops the super antiviral bacteria in her body and then sends it over to you. But I did all the right thing. Those idiots over there, they da. Yeah, and you die. Because you didn't care enough about her. And she's the one. I've got 5 pesos. I've got a baby. Or I've got finishing my antibacterial. I've got a screaming baby that needs milk. And I've got this weird doctor in a white coat that says I have to keep taking medicine after I feel the need. My need for food medicine is much stronger now. So I'm going to do that. Well, that's just some idiot, uneducated people. That's their responsibility. Okay, live that way. And die from their bacteria, because bacteria doesn't care about your borders. Or you can spend billions to create defenses so that their bacteria doesn't come in over there, which is 10 times more than the cost of sending them the food and giving them a hand. We can do whatever we want. The bottom line is we are in an interdependent reality that has impact on one another. And like it or not, it is often the people most hated, most ignored, most neglected, most abused, who most need help that no one is helping, that develop an ego defense of some kind or another that becomes the biggest problem for everyone else who wants to live in a paradigm that we're separate. Yeah, not my job, not my job, not my job. That's not me. I'm doing my part. I'm finishing my medicine. Doesn't matter. The medicine becomes useless once the new antiviral thing comes in. And so I'm, of course, looking at this whole nexus and this whole, thing around all this. And I have this very interesting dual experience. On the one hand, I am absolutely livid, terrified, never been able to rest my body deeply and fully for more than a few hours at a time in my life, exhausted from holding all that, angry. Everywhere I look around, I feel danger to this sense of ego. And I feel danger to other people's sense of ego. I look around at children and this and that, and I feel so sad. All 5 of my lovers in the past few years have experienced horrendous traumas. They've all been abused by their fathers. And I look at myself and I think, I'm not your perfect medicine. I wish I could be. The best I can do, since it seems like most of the people abusing them are shaming them for being abused. In other words, abusing them for being abused, blaming the victim. It's very popular. Because the victim is one source. So if you blame the victim, then it's the victim's fault. And then to solve the problem, the victim just needed to avoid being a victim. Wouldn't that be wonderful? If we could just... You have AIDS, it's your problem, and you should solve it by avoiding having AIDS. And then go away until you've done that. Wouldn't that be great? It's absolute absurdity, and it's just overstimulation of one ego managing the overstimulation of another ego. I don't know what the fuck to do either, so go do it on your own, because I don't want to feel all worked up that I don't know how to help you with all that I'm dealing with. So it's just I love what Terence McKenna said when quoting The Magic Mushroom, because I see some humorous truth in it. That's and basically what they're saying is the idea that you can learn anything about the totality or how things really are from the vantage point of a monkey brain 100,000 years out of the jungle in one planet out in the middle of nowhere is a joke. That you can't learn stuff from human beings about perfect symmetry or the totality of anything. You can get tiny little bits from other human beings, and yet in a culture and a consciousness in which we isolate ourselves by partitioning the social ecosphere into the left brain, so that most of us are not in consciousness with our guides, with our higher power and all that. And even when we are, it's more through the head. What I mean is, I read in a book, I have a higher self. Oh, I do. Now let me see what it is. Oh, the higher self is this part on the diagram. Oh, that's what it is. I mean, this is not direct knowledge. This is not perception. This is one left brain educating another left brain through a left brain vehicle that now says, I have a higher self. And then let me read how it feels. How does a person feel when they have a higher self? They feel happy. Okay, let me look at that little circle where it's bigger than the, it's like, okay, the personal self is here. Then there's this, and so, hello, happy, hello, higher self. Look at that. Hello. This is that what the higher self feels like? That's what the higher self feels like. Is that the better thing to look at? It is better to look at your higher self than your ego. Let me do, how many minutes a day am I supposed to do that? 5, no, 8 minutes, okay. Oh, I didn't look. Oh, it's 7 minutes. My mother's called again. She's ruined it. I was doing the higher. You know, I've got to talk to this author. Like, what do I do? My mother, I look at your diagram. I do that. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. You connect with anything vastly bigger than the human brain. It doesn't fit in that little book. It doesn't. The very, 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 very best thing you can possibly do is get a little hint of the direction to move in that's well beyond language. And then when you get out there, the fucking book and all the 8 minutes and stuff means absolutely nothing. It can all happen in an instant. You can stare at the damn book for 50 years. And yet, human beings who want to sell books will all say, it's in my book, it's in my book. You know, do the thing, do that, do this. I do it myself sometimes. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't and all that. But it's, anyway, I like that quote. And we have various terms and all that to worry about what we're worrying about. And, but I'm sitting with all this, of course, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, what I want to do with it. You know, poor ego, isolated consciousness, trying to figure out what to do with this state. And I've got past experience to go on. I've got physics to go on. I've got, you know, I've absorbed lots of left brain information in the last 5 years. Read about 500 books. It's about 5,000 hours on average of new data in positive psychology, happiness research, business, sales, marketing, entrepreneurship, and it's great fun. It's great fun because you get out there in the artistry of thought and everyone says the exact opposite of one another. It's great fun. Tim Ferriss has a new book out about something about titans, and one of the things that's fun in that book is even in one book you've got several hundred people of the top performers in our globe today talking about their protocol for being a top performer. And you read and they all say the exact opposite. I mean, not all, but that's an exaggeration, but you have one promising, the key to my success is getting up at 6 a.m. and doing this, and my life just exploded once I did this. And then you have Tony Robbins, the key to my thing is I've got to stay up till 3, 4 in the morning, and then I don't want to wake up until 11 or whatever. And that's the key to my success. The key to my success is, eating in this dose and then this dose and then this dose and this and that and the other. The key to my success is, the high, and you just look at it and you realize these are artisans that are using the poetry of thought, form, and ritual to craft a unique piece of art. And what they're really doing is they're using structure, the structure of having 5 solid colors, the structure of a 3x6 frame and canvas, the structure of a piece of art. They're using structure to create friction. And they're using their intimacy with structure to create a friction that wakes them up, that helps them focus, that helps them stay present for this ego, who would otherwise be lost. What's it like to be this ego at this moment in time? Saying what it can best see in the words it can best see them in. What's it like to be me? What's it like to be this ego at this moment in time? and once totally present, what emerges for this ego, and what are my protocols for staying present to this person at this moment in time? What are my protocols, my rituals? And one of the things that I've learned from reading biographies of wildly successful people is they create those out of their individuality. They create those out of what works for them. Thomas Edison had his rituals. I have mine. You may have yours. And so the real message is not to copy someone's ritual, but rather to copy the idea that you, the individual you, is uniquely built. And the individual you has enormous potential if the individual you is respected. And this is when we first go to battle with our family, culture, and environment in most cases. Because even the parents that sop sugar and soporific praise on the infantilized versions of themselves, like, oh, you're my little businessman. Oh, here's your little thing. Here's your, go for it. I'm totally for you. You're not for them at all. You're for the little pictograph of a cultural stereotype. Who that person may be, a geometric shape. Someone that wants to learn to create music with hand wavings and to create technology where they can hear the sound of the movement of their hands and wake up in that moment and learn not about a new patented drug that's going to put them on the cover of Time, but learn about a dimension of information that no news organization can manufacture, and therefore no corporation is interested in funding, so that they can connect with consciousness the neighbors can't measure, and therefore can't boost the family's self-image, and be busy doing that so they can't pay the rent in a culture that has no interest in explorations in consciousness, unless things are made and can be measured and sold in a materialist scientific paradigm. Well, our answers to joy, our answers to healing, our answers to gifts that we do not currently know how to measure are out there. We're in such a dysfunctional, unsustainable system that every day we make progress within it, we go further back. We're spending $3 to get $1. So our well-being is going down. And so we're going faster. $3 more to get $1. I got to do it faster. $3 more to get $1. $3 more to get $1. That was my experience in so many ways, trying to fight to get the support I knew how to process and receive within the coping structures that kept me protected from the pain I was carrying and didn't know how to deal with. The pain that ultimately is not my own. It's a pain that I accept in order to be here at this moment in time with all of you in this moment of time. Because to be here in this moment is to be separate, is to dishonor many things in ourselves, in each other, in the world, that are far more relevant to who we are and to consciousness and well-being than what we are paying attention to. So I sit with this paradox. How to love my ego. Terrified, traumatized, off the charts panic, loneliness, shame, grief, desperation. And realizing I don't know how, not fully. I'm moving to Thailand. That's not something everyone can do. It's like as soon as you find these threads of well-being, and there's all this structure, this human manufactured structure. So for $1,000, I can get a 1-year visa to Thailand. And every time I go back and forth, it's another $1,000. For $4,000 a month, I can keep my infrastructure here. So in other words, if I spend $50,000, I can keep a base in the United States in a year. That's just how much the structure of being here costs. The kind of the minimal thing with me not consuming a single item, keeping insurance and da-da-da. It's actually about $60,000 just to keep the base. So if I make $90,000, which means the business has to make $300,000, so that the government can take its half after materials, and then $60,000 gets spent on nothing, and then $30,000 gets spent to have the same base in Thailand, then I have that freedom. Or I put my ego through trauma. Well, what will happen? Can I move back? Well, is it too much? Whatever, it's like, my ego is more upset than it has ever been in my life, because I feel so isolated, meaning like there's not a single human being that I can point to, that I can rely on to help my ego be safe. And it's not, a lot of that is not physical safety, it's these coping mechanisms I'm talking about, how in control I feel. And those get pretty dramatic when sounds can create fears about this. Because a sound sets in place a whole thing. So first of all, the sound revs me up. But then I realize I'm not in control of who's producing the sound. Then I realize I'm in a culture where if I say, could you not produce that sound because it's in effect ruining my whole life, I'm in a culture where for that person to feel great about themselves, that and particularly if they've been humiliated and traumatized and they're making the sound as a coping mechanism, they're going to say, no one the fuck is going to tell me this is reasonable, da-da-da, stop being so sensitive, da-da-da-da-da. So now I'm in desperation because now I'm not sure I can survive because of a sound, because of a culture, because it's one of thousands of things I have no control over. And it's like, oh, what's the big deal? Just feel horror and timeless dread and da-da-da-da-da-da and addict and eat and da-da-da. Just do that, it's no big deal. It's just a lifetime. And it is. To God, to someone else. But to this ego, it's absolute hell. Well, just ask for help. Just pay someone $100 to $200 an hour to listen to you talk about it. It doesn't make it go away. And one of the things that I'm very clear about is that individuals are not sick. The ecology is sick, and individuals are a part of the ecology. We can do our part not to use our influence to create more sickness, more lack of, ecology. We can do our part. And, I've done my part around this coping mechanism. I mean, why does it take $60,000 a year to maintain a base here? Because that's what it costs to maintain a base in which I'm not, like I slept last night without worrying about being traumatized, because that doesn't happen more than about 3% during the year, because I have a whole house to myself, because of where I picked the house, because of the proximity of my neighbors, because of who the neighbors are, because of this, because of that, because of all that stuff. But that's $40,000 a year just there. Well, why can't you just build this and that and the other? I wish I bought some land and, I had lots of fun plans on easy, great ways to build the land. But my government and structure and all that has no interest in me creating a wonderful well-being oasis for myself that I can build myself for this and that and the other. No interest whatsoever. It's so beautiful being in other countries where freedom, real freedom, still exists. You watch the many, many creative ways that people are artists with their homes and their life, and take personal responsibility for their choices, including if their home is not earthquake safe, well, it moves around in an earthquake. But they get to be the one deciding whether they feel more threatened by an earthquake or whether they feel more threatened by not being able to pay the rent or not being able to construct a home because it's been so over-engineered by the government that it costs $400,000 to build the most basic structure. They get to decide that, and it's about their well-being, their sense of it, and all of that. And I really like that individual sense. But I also like the way the Danes are doing it in Denmark, because they're doing it at about a 300% to 400% higher quality of life from Western metrics, with more regulation, but there's still the safety. No one's feeling like they have to decide between rent and sanity, between health and recreation and things like that. And so I'm in this state where I was interested to listen to Eckhart Tolle talking about the fact that his break, his dissociation with reality and dissociation from the ego came through pain. In other words, his life was so miserable that he couldn't be present with it, so he left his body, learned a bunch of things, and then came back. In other words, his dissociation was not through ecstasy, through pleasure, but ecstasy through pain, which it all works. I've been finding a whole variety of things. And there's an interesting way where in the vast amounts of loneliness and pain and grief and rage and horror and absurdity in all of this, that unable to succeed at my coping strategies of control, unable to protect myself from overwhelming loneliness, grief, sadness, helplessness, terror, shame, insanity, that a whole new world in the dissociation from this reality is opening and has opened up for me. And on that level of opening up, things look very different. And part of what I'm exploring and learning about is who to honor and how to honor it for maximum well-being. Because, as I say, on some level, like I'm opening up to a reality of divine love and beauty and presence and grace. And in that reality, all the consciousness behind all the individuals hurting me are my friend. The consciousness behind. It's of course very confusing for the ego. What do you mean? What do you mean? That's the person who's hurting me the most. That's not my friend. That is not my friend. And yet there's this other reality where the consciousness that I'm meeting through that enemy, through that friend, through that acquaintance, is standing in honor and celebration of the consciousness that is emerging in me, is supporting that. And this is a very paradoxical and interesting experience. And I'm partly mentioning it because this is a video about trauma, dissociation, extraordinary pain, abuse, and all that. And ironically, someone who has experienced this, in addition to being predisposed to addiction, is initiated fiercely into shamanic terrain. The wisest tribes throughout our history have taken those people at the edge of cultural reality and blessed them with the role and the initiation of shaman, to become the guide between the worlds, the realities that are outside the culture's box. And every person needs a box of certainty as their baseline. And the reality out there is so big relative to any one culture, relative to any one individual, that the ego rejoices with the peace of mind as soon as it can have some sense that I only have to look in this little box. Thank goodness I can't possibly make sense of something so big, so I only have to look in this little box. And then anything outside the box becomes the enemy. It's like I finally found something I can escape into, and I can just be in a box. One of the greatest gifts you can give to someone shaking in trauma can be to squeeze them so hard that they come back into their body and escape the nightmare of timelessness and dimensionality they are not yet equipped to navigate with grace back in their body. Squeezing someone with all the strength and pressure and just being, and they have the great freedom of escaping the vastness of dimensionality and returning to only what these eyes and ears can hear in this moment. Thank heavens you're now sane. Thank heavens you're now out of touch with the rest of reality that is too overwhelming to deal with. Thank heavens you're here in this little box with me. And that's a gift to the ego. But the shaman doesn't have the choice. The shaman has some trauma, some dissociation that's so big they have to go out there to repair the damage. They have to go out there to find out what's going on, because no one within the ecosphere of the intelligence capable of creating the wound has the intelligence capable of healing the wound. So they have to go out there. And so I'm in these two realities right now. And my Western trained mind ego is having an absolute fit. Just by this alone. I mean, this is an upsetting thing to contemplate for the Western trained ego. What do you mean? What do you mean this is this and that? You know, are you saying that it's all right for parents to abuse their children? Are you saying it's all right for untrained idiots to sexually pursue their clients without helping them? Are you saying it's love not to gather any information about someone's imbalance before making it worse? Are you saying this? Are you saying that that's what we need? We need more abusive this, and are you saying that? And we need all that because we need more shamans in the world, because you've stumbled into this exalted, altered state out here. Are you saying that's okay? This is not okay. I'm going to this, someone's going to pay. This is happening. This is happening. This is not right. This is not how we do things in the West. This is not the therapeutic protocol. This is not intelligent. The statistics don't back it up. This is bad science. So the ego needs its space to say all this, to feel all this, to see it, and have it be honored. And if it's not blocked, see, I disengaged from Peter primarily because he can't hear all of this without getting scared, and then he pushes back, which creates a reverberation cycle where now my ego has to, it's quite remarkable. I've made more than 300 hours of film in the last year, sometimes 6 hours a day, with my ego defending every single thing Peter said was wrong about my ego. You know, Peter says, the one thing I can't stand about you is your control. Well, you idiot, let me look at the books, Aha! You know? Helplessness and despair in a traumatic state is a killer. You've got to get out of it. How do you get out of it? You reassert personal agency. You've got to get control. You've got to have immediacy. And you fuckers, you've done the exact opposite. You've stonewalled me and put me out and put me in a 6-month process and lied to me, and You've given me the exact opposite. If only I had been able to control the situation, none of this would have happened, you idiots. You fucking idiots. You can't tolerate my control, and yet you don't know how to control things in a healthy way. You're like reckless drivers who are trying to be unconditional and bash into every car because you won't even take hold of the wheel. You won't even learn which way right and left is. So when I say go left, you go right. And then you get upset that there's another accident and you don't want to pay for it and this and that. You fucking idiots, you idiots, you idiots. So when the ego is absolutely fragile, which it is in a traumatic state. I mean, the ego is at its very edge of its existence. And on some level, we know that if the ego dissociates totally and can't function, the lifetime is over. I mean, the lifetime only exists as long as the fragile matrix of the ego through which to view it is here. But the way to transcend the ego is not to tell the ego what's wrong with it and this and that and the other. I mean, that's a little bit of the joke of all my complaints to all the egos at high is now they're going to have to, defend themselves and do that and that and the other. Because they need their egos, their egos need love and acceptance and understanding for being egos. And they need to be big enough to say that I am. It's okay to be a flawed ego. And it's okay not to know, and it's okay, but you can't ignore impact. If I crash my car into your car, that's, one flawed ego banging into another flawed ego. But we can't then pretend, no, this was love, this was this, it's all wonderful, I'm just here for you as you're raging at me about being banged into. I know this is all about you, it's all your stuff, just be there. No, fix my car, you fucking lunatic, get out of your fucking, here, have a slap on this, still all my stuff, here. Now it's our stuff, is it? Okay, now we can have a real conversation. Now wake up and stop banging into my car, you miserable, and stop calling this love, and stop charging me money. Wake up, get away, get a move on. Wake up, you idiots. So this is all ego. Now, when my ego can do that expansively and feel sane, and yes, and this author agrees with me, and this author, my ego is safe. That's when the interesting stuff happens. That's when the ego's interesting stuff happens. Now, the dangerous stuff about people in this terrain is, a good 50% of you are bursting to take some punches at my ego. Taking up all our time, saying all these things. Who do you think you are? You can't wait. And your ego needs it. Go ahead, do it. Your ego needs it. Go ahead. Enjoy yourself. Take those punches. But the fucked up system we're both in is in a system of undiagnosed trauma. It's the trauma of near ending. It's the trauma of shame. It's the trauma of not being safe and accepted and at home in our bodies, in our culture, in our world, in our ecology, in our femininity and who we are. It's a very traumatic event. And yet, great pain, near-death experiences, your legs sliced off, you had a car accident, you're in an inch of your life. These are the people that go to the tunnel of light, to the place where it's all fine, where nothing's wrong. The ego, in so much desperation, it can't touch or contact another human being at all. That's the person that channels the deity. Oh my gosh, I'm sane. I'm healthy. The whole world around me is sick, but I'm healthy. Of course, that pivots into we are sick and we are healthy once we move back into relationship with people, because we all embody just the language and culture needed to interface being a very flawed, being about 40% of what we need. That means 60% is dysfunctional just by operating. The answer can't come from within the culture. The answer can't come from the ego. The answer can't come out of the wound. The answer comes from the ecosphere that's outside of humanity, from the parts of us that we have disassociated with to be here, because those parts are more healthy, they're more integrated, they're more whole than this ego consciousness within this partitioned left brain of this culture. That's and there are places on the earth, and nature is one of them, and certain tribes are, they're imbalanced in a different way, and that can be medicinal. There's a fine line between toxicity and medicine, and it has to do with the dose. It's all about regulation. There's no energy that is positive or negative. It's all about the regulation. The timing, the sequence, and the dose determines whether anything takes us towards well-being, kills us, or ecstasy. The timing, the dose, and the sequencing. The intensity. It's all about the pattern of the pattern of the pattern. We're just matrices of ecological patterns all intersecting. One bit of software will crash another bit of software, but they're both fine running on their own. Is one good? Is one bad? No, it's just not good to load the other software when you've got this software. If this one crashes and you need this one to communicate with your friends. It's that kind of situation. So I'm walking this balance right now, where I move over into the one reality where Lazarus is a self-centered, sociopathic, hypocritical, abusive idiot who, this is my teacher and channel, who tells a 14-year-old boy he's creating his own reality, and all you have to do is do this 7-step meditation and all your reality will change, or you're doing it wrong. And that boy is opening his headphones and putting it on, and parents are still screaming, opening his headphones, I've done another meditation. Are my parents any better? No, they're still not any better. Oh, poor me. It's like, I've ruined the technique. Lazarus was counting on me. He said this worked. He said I have payoffs. If I haven't created my own reality, it's because I have payoffs. So what am I evil about now? Okay, I have this thought. That's why my parents are still doing this. It's like, okay, let's clear out the thought, do the meditation. It's like, you fucking asshole. How dare you do this to a 14-year-old boy? You say you're in this continual orgasm and all that. Get your fucking, get out of here. Or stop showing up on tapes and take some physical form. Channel 10 people, not just one. Have a conversation. Look at what it's like here. Look at your impact, you motherfucker. It's like, it's all very well for you and your multiple orgasms. Show up here. Look at your impact. My shame, my insanity, my rage is up because of the impact of your words. And you haven't even bothered being physical. What the fuck are you doing here? Get out of here, you asshole. So that's, good for you, ego, for defending yourself. Why are you feeling like a shit? because these asshole teachers and channels are all sitting there and they're all charging you money. We're not your teacher. We're not your guru. We are your friend. Well, go be a fucking friend to someone else who doesn't have to pay you $600 for 4 days of listening to a monologue about the lost civilizations of Atlantis, and might actually listen to me talk about how fucked up it is to listen to your fucking tapes, be told it's all my fault that my parents are having a divorce. You fucking piece of shit. Get out of here. This is outrageous. So this is, of course, healthy ego talk. Because if the ego gets turned in on itself, I'm bad, I'm doing it all wrong, it can't function. It can't function. But then there's this other dimension that kind of emerges on the other side of this. See, like, this is what's so fucked up about the Jack and Lazarus community, is I started to talk about that. And everyone jumped on me. You know, I don't want to hear about your anger. You're in your negative ego, da-da-da-da-da. In other words, no space for my ego to have any of its own experience in its own reality. It's perfectly fine for Lazarus to say, I create my reality, that everything is an illusion. But it's not okay to say Lazarus is creating his reality. I mean, why is Lazarus creating a reality in which me and many people I know are fucking up around his tapes? Why is he creating that reality instead of a reality where he merges consciousness, speaks in language, shows up in our reality? Why doesn't he show up to my parents and help them, figure out what they need to do to stop hurting me? Why doesn't he do that? Why doesn't Lazarus create that reality? Oh, you couldn't understand. Well, then, if we can't understand, why are you saying we're a friend and you're not a teacher? Well, you wouldn't understand that either, but you're still my friend. Yeah. And I have to pay you. You're a prostitute friend. Yeah. Well, that doesn't feel very friendly to me. Oh, well. So this is one level, and this is, I think it's very, very important that the ego have its space in this reality. This is fucked up. It's fucked up, it's all wrong. You know, whatever the ego needs to have its field day of blame, rage, righteousness, self-pity. This doesn't add up, that's suspicious, that's not unconditional love. How can you say, I don't belong to your group if I don't believe in unconditional love? That's not unconditional, because unconditional love has space for people who don't believe in unconditional love. That's a big condition, since almost no one does. I mean, come on, let's be sane here. And I'm in this reality, and I get caught up in it, and I get the sense that it's not the full picture. And so I go in this other reality where it's kind of the exact opposite. It's like my parents have abused me, but it wasn't fatal. The high facilitators have bungled this whole awakening process I'm going through in a major way and thrown salt on the wound. But it's like a bump. It's like a difficult landing. When you're landing a 747 and the wind changes a bit, it vibrates, and it's like a bump. It's not fatal. I haven't gone up in smoke and destroyed the whole lifetime over that. But my ego is so upset and paranoid, like, when's the next bump? I almost got wiped out there, that it gets traumatized and needs to have its say. This isn't right. This isn't ethical. You don't do that to children. You don't do that to children. You stop it. And of course, when that gets shamed and turned into a secret, then the ego really says, I knew it. This was all wrong. The whole thing is fucked up. It's even worse than I thought. And if you suppress and you attack that ego, then it knows it's even more wrong. I mean, it's an endless cycle, for this ego that's trying to find safety and sanity and health and integrity in this reality where these things are, complicated enough, even with the best of intentions. And then there's this other space. And one of the reasons, so when I get to these other dimensions, then some part of me wants to go along with this ego bashing. It's like, wow, this is such an amazing opportunity this lifetime. I've been initiated into the entire planet's pain and wound in such a way that I can actually see it and can see just how trapped every bit of human consciousness is and has been for so long, and how it's no one's fault. There's just, wow, it's amazing. And I care so much. I care so much. It's just vast amounts of caring, kindness, and love. And I don't want to say a thing. I don't want to blame anyone. I don't want to do anything. I just want to stay in this non-human state. So I hang out in there for a while. And I'm grateful. And I feel loved. And it's beautiful. And then I come back into my ego. And my ego's in the same mess it was before. You don't have a community. You don't have friends here. This so-and-so's judging you, this and that. That's completely unfair. They've set you up. They've drawn out the worst in you. The worst. And now they're just sitting there poking at you, and they're using that to punish you further. Like, let's walk up to someone, not see that they're carrying a fragile crystal wedding cake. Let's shove them over so the wedding crashes. And then when they're in tears and laying on the ground, it's like, my wedding cake. I mean, it's just, I work so hard on that. It's so, come on, move along now. What do you mean? I mean, aren't you going to apologize? Aren't you going to help? Come on, we've got things to do here. And you realize you're just being shoved off to the side. And then that hurts. It's like there's this grief of just being knocked over by some unconscious asshole. And then the indignity of having that grief shoved aside because it's in the way of some modern protocol of, we all do this, so of course we've got to shove you out of the way because you're in the way of doing this. Well, of course, just out the way. And they're like, this is disgusting. This is disgusting. That was beautiful what got knocked over. That was magnificent. And these assholes are so dumb they didn't even see it. They have no idea what they don't know. God, this has got to stop. I'm not going to go through another 5 years of creating another nice design and this and that and the other. Just have the next person whack in. I mean, who do these fuckers think they are, whacking this and that and the other and da 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 da, and this, that, and the other, and the answer is not that we just kill ourselves or go into dissociated spaces where everything looks wonderful and is transcendent and the whole universe is trying to help you. Yeah, that's fine for you up there, but what about me? I've got wedding cake all over my jacket. I've got this. And not only that, it's worse. It'd be one thing if all I had to do was build another wedding cake and gracefully carry it. And this time it would be honored. But no, I'm surrounded by fucking fools that are going to bang into me the next time. They don't even see it. And if they see it, they discount it. What's most beautiful to me, that they could give a shit about it. It's like this beautiful sculpture behind me was one of my desperate reasons to keep living for another year, because I'm so tired of being asked to create mediocrity again and again and again. Let's have exactly what The Neighbors has, with a few little tweaks. Could we do that? We'd love to pay you thousands of dollars to do that. How about this? How about that? No, we can't have that. What would The Neighbors say? Like, fine, we'll do what The Neighbors say. We'll make it 3 shades darker gray. You happy? Fine. Sign the contract. Let's have the money. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? And so this is the fight. This is the engagement. And what I've learned is that has to be welcomed. That there, within the ecology, that in other words, if an environment produces violence within its individuals, the violence is what is most necessary to get the attention of the environment. I hate violence, and so I've got a little bit of a dilemma. I've never been more close to violence. I've never felt more violent in my whole life than I have with the high facilitators. Isn't that a joke? And of course, we have the great solution to violence, if we can possibly get it, which is to use violence against anyone who uses violence, because they're, of course, the problem. Of course, I know the problem is an ecology that produces levels of pain without attunement and without response, and makes it worse. Like, this is the biggest joke of all, and it's one of the most amazing experiences. In the middle of all this, when I'm in absolute agony, and I realize that an honest owning and an apology from the facilitators would take 1/3 of my pain away. And so I asked Peter and every other facilitator to do that. And Peter does an amazing job. It's one of his few come-throughs for me in this whole process. He just hits it out of the park. Because everyone's watching, I've learned that Peter needs an audience. So behaves like an absolute shit alone with me, abusing me, but if I ask him to do something in front of the other facilitators, he's golden. He's not interested in me. He's interested in demonstrating to them how great he is. So he does it. And it is great. I love it. And of course, it's not it's not black and white. It's not like Peter's out to get me or whatever. He needs a little bit of extra outside incentive before he has his character. Like, he needs a little bit of fear, a little bit of an audience, something to push him over the edge and do the right thing when it's confronting him with his stuff. So he's got a very strong defense, but he's also got a strong motivation to be the hero and this and that and the other. So when I put him in an environment where he's got his defense, where he's not going to get to be the hero, where he has to be a shit, where he has to do this and that and the other, all the stuff he hates seeing about himself and doing. If it's all alone or whatever, he'll attack me, dump me, and blame me, and deny it all, and pretend, and then throw all that he's being unconditionally loving, and I'm just being an imbecile. But you do the same thing in front of the facilitators or an audience. Now he's got the chance to really shine, and he likes that. This is great. Good for you, Peter's ego. You like it. Wonderful. I'll give you the chance. He likes it. So then he just hits this out of the park. Scripted beautifully. It's wonderful. All the other facilitators, though, say nothing at all. And this adds to the pain. It's like, what you're telling me is that my pain that you are directly influencing, that I've got a fire here that I'm dealing with from my parents, and you've expanded that fire 500%, and it is painful. And here's how you could reduce the temperature for me a third. Apologize for this, 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 and this. And I'm in more pain than I've ever been in. And your posture is you shouldn't be wasting your time reading my emails. I mean, you fucking arrogant bastards. I'm gonna get you fucking shits. You would have done this for $200 fucking dollars. And this cost me $30,000. I'm flat. The immune system you just knocked out by that betrayal cost me $30,000. I felt it in my body, the sinking feeling, and I'm at my edge to begin with from all this. I'm playing this interesting balancing act. So, knocked out my feet. So I'm outraged, you fucking shitheads. You fucking shitheads. You fucking cowards. Is this how you treat your participants? If they have the nerve to call your bluff about the room of love, is this your fucking idea of love? I'm gonna sue you, You're so cheap. You're so cheap. You're griping around $2,000. I'm into this $40,000 already in the worst 6 months of my life in absolute trauma. You're fucking so cheap. It's too much for you to read the email. Is that really it? Just wait until you're all bankrupt in court. And then I've got to look at this. I'm exhausted. Is that really in everyone's interest? Just because we've got inane facilitators that can't see anything in the line of reasonable ethics? Is that, is it good for high to go down? Maybe high would be better off with new facilitators. What, and what about me? Do I want to be dragged through the nightmare of U.S. courts just because I'm so pissed off about this, just to get some of my money back? Because then they'll happily apologize as soon as I take them to court. Oh, no, Mr. Rose, it was all a misunderstanding. We're very sorry. We're so sorry. Just don't touch $1,000 of our money. Just no. Oh, it's so important to us. We love you. We're unconditional. It's like so disgusting. And yet, how do I find myself in all this? Am I this being supported by the facilitators to wake up? Am I this being feeling the love from Anne, the love from Sarah, believe it or not? I mean, it's like, what do you mean Sarah? She's connived and betrayed and refuses to do, What's going on here? And yet, there's this reality and there's this reality. Who's the me that's part of both realities? What would I do if I was being really loving with myself? Would I give these people a chance to trigger me again? Would I sue them? Have them carry some of the burden of their impact? Should I just run away? This is so fucked up. It's not even loving for me to be in this domain. Should I just move and dissociate from this entire group? This is something that happens a lot, and that's one of the reasons I'm going through these choice points. Is this is what someone who is betrayed and abused in these ways has to deal with. And they're not fun choices. Because what they are demanding by behaving this violently, by violently I mean they're not attuning to me. When you've got sunburn, you've got to be very gentle and put aloe vera. You don't just say, come on, get a move on. You've just shocked them. I mean, you've got to attune to the person where they're at. Particularly when you've been the one shining the sun and not protecting that skin. So someone's sleeping, they've trusted you, you said you're going to take great care, you set up a super UV light on them and they're completely fried by the time they wake up. They're in pain, they seek out for help, and then you slap them. And don't you be rude with me, don't you how dare you, The typical parent thing is anytime their kid is upset by the barbarous torture they're enduring that day. It's the time for the good old righteous martyr to come out and remind the child of all the sacrifices. The child would probably have loved never to have been born and spared the parent all those sacrifices, but we couldn't have had those parents not looking like real adults and not having any children, so can't have that. So how to be with this? And I'm learning. I don't know for sure. I'm learning that it doesn't come from human beings, that there's not really a book or a guru or this, that, the other, or a therapist or a teacher that has the way. That's just one more learning in a lifetime of learning, that the majority of what the majority says for me doesn't lead to a good place for anyone. And even what the majority is most upset about around this, things like the fact that sex and drugs were involved, which are not my biggest gripes. I think it's outrageous that these drugs are illegal. I think it's outrageous that more scientific research hasn't been done. What cowards call themselves scientists, out to pursue the knowledge and all this, but we just can't study this. Of course not. It's the most important thing of human consciousness and all that, but that in itself has been irritating to scientists for some time, because consciousness is not subject to the laws of science. It can't even explain consciousness, so it's not that interested in it. The obvious blind spots all around us are such a joke. And the joke's on us. It's an absolute joke. The greatest minds of science have come from these liminal states of consciousness, whether it's Einstein dreaming or Descartes getting his vision in it from an angel, or this or that, or one of the other evolutionists with Darwin being interested in his spiritualism and investigating that. The greatest breakthroughs in science come from these liminal states of consciousness that, because they don't fit within the scientific paradigm, science turns right around and commits patricide by attacking its source, because its source does not fit within itself. How could it? How could the parents fit within the child? They're bigger than the child. Paradox is, the child loved and served has the chance to become bigger than the parents. The child has the opportunity, the potential, to become the parent and the teacher of the parent. In a healthy dynamic, that's what you do. The parent serves and sacrifices themselves, lays down the ego to love and protect the child. And the child grows up and eventually, having matured through a strong ego, reaches a level where it lays down the ego to teach the parent about the love that happens in a dependent state, in helplessness, in codependency. Because when you can't move, because every ancient one will reach the same dependency on the young as the young experienced with the old. And the young will usually use the template provided by the old. So if that's a template of, we don't need these useless kids around here, they're always ruining our life, look at this and that and the other. That is how we take care of our old, and that's how we take care of our young. It's a cruel joke that the most sweet forms of love, honoring need, desperation, dependency, grief, intensity, bonding, deep transparency. These forms of love are the most transcendent because they get to the edge of boundarylessness. When we start to feel like one, when we give up the one to serve the other and realize that it is ourself. When I could not induce the facilitators to give up their agendas, their dogmas, their fears, their busyness, and their blind spots to be of service, it was heartbreaking. I felt in that state that I was very near death, and it was very boring to live in this kind of a world where this is, this is the icing on this world's cake, what High does. It's kind of like this huge cultural improvement over the norm. And so I flipped it around, laying flat on my back, unable to move, unable to get up for more than a few hours a day, unable to work, in very liminal consciousness in a 5-star hotel in Manila, getting 2 to 5 hours of healing work with a masseuse that I trained as an energy worker and who did phenomenal energy work. I could feel grace and visit her, if you haven't met her, in some form. She is so transcendent. So beautiful. I won't bother that resonance with words other than to say that she is there. If you haven't met her, you're not alive, not in the real sense. So much more alive than what's called alive. And I'm feeling the grief for myself and the grief that we live in a world that the facilitators probably feel relief at not having to love these parts of me. They're certainly far more angry and defensive and shaming and blaming than they are responsive. They're fighting off, this isn't our job, we shouldn't have to do this. And it's such a betrayal of our human possibility. And I realize what they're losing out on, what Hai is losing out on, and what I'm losing out on. And I extrapolate that out because it's not personal. And I realize what we as a humanity are losing out on. America loses out on so much when we are forced to look through the cultural lens in order to exist in others' cultural eyes. And everything that matters most is invisible or despised and in disguise. In that state, I had an image of a young woman. And I go back into ego consciousness and I dismiss her entirely. It's like, oh God, not another young woman who is all absorbed in herself and da da da. I mean, this is not, the last thing I need is to be betrayed again by another self-centered person and da 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 da. It's like, I just can't, I don't have the energy to even explain that I don't want to explain it. I can't be patient with another human being, with another spirit so warped and twisted by our culture that everything that I say lands in a dark region of themselves, meaning something different than I mean when I say the words. And I can't go into another dark maze and try and find out what weird twist of fate has made these words into horrible things. So why the hell am I getting an image of this woman? I don't know. But she's there. And one of the great things about, well, first of all, when you're about ready to die, it doesn't matter what the culture says. I mean, it all gets a bit of a joke, but I conclude, I think I can be of service. There's no way this woman can help me. What's the other solution? She's coming into my presence in a high resonance. I must be able to be capable of being of some help. So as long as I don't hold the posture that I'm near death, I feel outraged, I feel used, shamed, I resent and all this, and I'm trying to get someone to come and help me the way I need to be helped, and stop punishing me for being punished. As long as I can put that aside and hold this, that I have something valuable for her, and let's see what it is. If I'm honest, if I go into this meeting clear that that's the deal here, I'm okay with it because I'm signing up for it. When I'm signing up for a lover and a date and they show up like that, I'm outraged. I mean, yet again? I mean, doesn't anyone know what they want? Doesn't anyone get excited when a man talks? I've heard thousands of women complain that men aren't communicative, they're not sensitive, they're not honest, they cheat on them, they do this, and all they want is a man who wants this. It's like, I'm so fucking tired of hearing all these people, and the same fucking people. I've never lied to a woman, never cheated on a woman, I'm not mostly interested in your body, I will talk to you till the cows come home, I'm very sensitive, I'm totally interested in personal growth, I make much more money than you do, here's your guy, I'm tall, what the fuck do you want? Oh, that's too intense. I'm not interested in like that. Could you fit me in between Tuesday and Thursday between my yoga? Oh, well, I'll just go on dreaming of the perfect man and all that. But I don't want to waste my time doing work. It's just so aggravating. It's the insult of the insanity. It's like, we want this, we're so annoyed, men are doing this to us. So anyway, I have all this bile about all this, and it's I don't quite know what the boundaries are, frankly, around what's being rude and insensitive and what's hurting me and what's hurting other people and all this. This stuff is just in there, and now it's out there. Please forgive me for insulting you if that's what's happening. So anyway, I figure I have enough energy to get out of bed and meet her for dinner. And so I get up and I call her, and she, then I learn that she wants to bring this chaperone. It's like, oh gosh, now I've got two people. I hate that. One is enough. I can just pull my attention on one person. I go downstairs, I meet her, and, just exactly as I think, completely the opposite of what I need as a partner, whatever. So I'm focusing on why I'm having the meeting. I'm assuming I have something I can do to help this woman. And so I ask all the questions about how I can be helpful. What's going on in her life? What are her problems? Where is she getting stuck? Where is she getting stuck in her writing? I just learn. And I ask about 30 questions, and I identify 5 core areas that she's interested in and feeling stuck. And I help her with all 5 areas. And I help her by giving her things to do. Read this book, watch this, download this app, do this, do this. And I say, has this been useful? And she says, very useful. I say, okay, if you will do these 5 things and tell me how they work for you exactly. Did it work? Did it not work? How well? What are you ready for next? What are your new problems? I will help you again. Here's my email address. Feel free to write. Now, I've offered this probably 1,000 times, and about 5 people have taken me up on it. So that's less than 1%. So I'm not expecting to hear from her, but I've followed my vision. I've been the best service I can be of. And I go back to bed because I'm exhausted. And a few days later, I get an email. I read the book, I did this, I downloaded the app, I'm doing this. She did all 5 things. How was it? Well, it was very helpful. I learned this in the book. This app is helping me with this. Aha! So you're ready for some more stuff? Yes. I want you to write me a book about your life experience. There's always a good discipline for almost everyone. I want you to tell me, I want you to help me see you. She sits down, writes a book on her phone. It's an amazing book. Amazing. Because it does exactly what it was intended to do. It helps me see her. It helps me understand her wounds, her imbalances, how she's hurting herself by internalizing the hostility of the environment, where she's confused, where she's got a voice that's healthy and then another voice inside that attacks that. Tells me all that. And I go through line by line of the book, wherever there are these conflict points, and I champion her. And I say, you don't deserve this. This feeling is valid. This is sane. This is a healthy human response to being molested, being this. This is you. Respect it. This voice that is attacking you because your church, because this, that, and the other, that is crazy, and that is not you. You've taken it on because you've been beaten and humiliated and punished if you don't do it, but that is a disease. And I'm going to be the one person who fights for you. I've wanted that my whole life. No one's ever done it. People have griped, and I'm going to be that for you. So basically, I'm just giving up on human beings doing any of this whole healthy protocol for me. Paid or unpaid, doesn't seem to matter. And I'm going to do it. And it gets interesting because her life dramatically lifts. I mean, by the day. My ego loves it. See, I was right, look, anyone could be doing this. I'm not a trained therapist. I'm just a human being who cares about helping someone. Why are we so fucked up in this world? Why have I been tearing my hair out for 40 years? Because no one's doing this. I'm just a human being. Why can't we care about one another? Why isn't this why isn't someone wanting to read my books and responding to that? Anyway, but great, good for you, ego, for knowing all that. I read through the lines. Okay, that sentence. And I send her recordings. She's not around. She's not my girlfriend. She's not, I send her recordings. I say, page 3, you say this, 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 and this, and then you say this. But that's not fair. You don't go beating yourself up because you are surrounded by such imbeciles that when you go to them for help, they shame you. That's their idiocy. That's their stupidity. I know all about that. That's not right. Get rid of that sentence. Your little girl doesn't deserve that. I won't tolerate. I refuse to have her sullied by that remark. Get rid of it. That's worthy of idiots, not you. And this is exactly what a self needs to hear. An advocacy for it. Someone who's willing to betray the church, the culture, the family, the school, lovers, to take a stand for the healthy growth of the self. That is what we need. And Anne is actually very good at that when she doesn't have a conflict of interest. Very good at this. So it's her greatest gift, Anne Watts. So I'm doing that for her. Line by line. It takes me about 15 minutes a day. And her life is going up about 10% a day. It's great. 10% a day. It's like sometimes huge jump, averaging out. Sometimes it's 60%. So further, I know the medicine now. I teach her the thing that has had more impact on me than almost anything else, deep inner child meditation work, which changed my life 30%. I started it when I was 15 years old. I was healing my inner child and my inner adolescent for hundreds of hours in meditation, starting at 15 years old, every week. Made a huge difference. And my life was still hell, but it was 30% less hell than it would have been otherwise. So I give her the technique. And I ask her to do it the first thing when she wakes up. She does. wow. I mean, we're looking at 200 and 300% explosions in resonance. But I drill in. After reading the book, I ask her to write a diary, because this is what I did when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I wrote a diary. And I analyzed and I refined the pattern, wrote the pattern and then refined the pattern, wrote the pattern, refined the pattern, wrote the pattern, refined the pattern. You can't edit it until it's externalized. And I told her to send me her diary so that I could protect her from the internalized attacker. So every day she sends her diary, and it's what happened, what she thought, and what she felt about what happened, and what she's going to do because that happened. That was my format when I was growing up. So what happened, what you thought about it, what you felt about it, and what you're going to do if you're going to do something about it, what it is for tomorrow or the next day. And I saw rampant disease all around her. This person shaming her for this, that person is attacking what's most healthy in her. This person is shaming her for that, that person is attacking what's most healthy in her. No one is standing up for what's beautiful and healthy and individual about this young woman. This is a stupendous crime. Stupendous. This girl is beaten, molested, shamed, abandoned, used, stolen from, humiliated, used again. And she's the only sane person in the lot. But she is being singled out for attack. This is outrageous. And so as not to provoke too much hostility, she's agreeing to hurt herself so that they don't hurt her as much. A sane coping strategy. But this is profound self-hatred on the part of a culture. This is a culture hating itself so much that it is ensuring that its citizens upon which it depends are all poisoned. How is that culture going to grow? It's disgusting. I read and I defend. I read and I defend. I read and I celebrate. I read and I celebrate. I read and I defend. I read and I celebrate. Defend and celebrate. I love this part of you. This is beautiful. This is amazing. Give those fuckers back their crazy idea. That was smart what you did, and they're so idiotic. They're blaming you for being smarter than they are. You can't get more stupid than that. They're not learning from you. They're blaming you. They're attacking. They're ganging up. You're reading. Heaven forbid. Well, we don't read around here. You're reading. So let's gang up on you for that. I mean, give me a fucking break. Defend and celebrate. Defend and celebrate. This is amazing. I spend 15 minutes a day doing that and refining the strategy. Here's what I want you to do here. Next time these assholes do this, try doing this. When someone does this, try doing this. Read this book. Watch this video. Do this. Start doing yoga. Start doing meditation. How is it working? What happened when you do that? What happened when you did that? Did your well-being go up? Did it go down? By what percentage? Okay? Here's what I think would be a good strategy. Will you do this? Does that feel right? Okay, do that. Tell me what's happening. I want to read what's going on line by line, thought by thought. What's the code we're dealing with? I want to see the big picture. I want to see the small picture. And I want the beautiful parts of you to have a chance to come out. Well, she just blossoms. "15 minutes a day. Reversing at great speed a lifetime of toxicity, abandonment, abuse, shame, malnourishment, molestation. 15 minutes a day. That's how beautiful we are. This is how strong the human spirit is. That with the right medicine, in 15 minutes a day, not 15 minutes of rescuing her, not 15 minutes of shaming her, not 15 minutes of listening and doing nothing, not 15 minutes of saying, that's interesting, not 15 minutes of covering my crap, but 15 minutes of reading, defending, and celebrating and suggesting, and 15 minutes of gathering feedback using a 1 to 10 scale per every single suggestion, and watching in the diary what actually happens. You know? Obviously, if I'm making a suggestion, do this, and she's doing this and can't get her work done, and now her boss is shouting at her, that's not a good protocol. That's not medicine. I've just set her up to being shouted at. I need to know, what are the results? Line by line by line. And I care about one thing only, her well-being. And the absurdity of thinking to charge her or make this awkward for her or have her drive over and see me at, 2 hours round trip, what a joke. It is profoundly self-hating to terrorize people to this extent and then leave them dysfunctional, hurting themselves and everyone else, unable to contribute, and then say, if you want to get out of that mess and be more helpful, just pay us and go through some incompetent protocol. And then, by the way, take some time off work and drive 2 hours round trip. Absolute joke. Otherwise, you can just stay hurting yourself and hurting the rest of us. We don't care. We don't love ourselves in this culture. We're ignorant, we're stupid, and we're proud of it. 15 minutes a day. An intelligent mind ready to open. Thankfully, I was smart enough to extrapolate that if this person couldn't possibly give me anything, maybe I could give something to her. And yet, as I saw her grow, she gave me something more valuable than I had received in the last several years from anyone. She gave me something natural and pure, her love. Because love is natural. When someone sees you, cares about you, and does their best to help you for no other reason than because they want to honor who you are and they believe that who you are is good. Not because you've shown it, but because of a faith that we're all good at that level. We're all good at that level. And we're just waiting for an environment for that goodness to blossom. A redwood seed needs a fire. An alfalfa seed needs just the right level of moisture for 3 or 4 days, or it can sit there for years, dormant, existing with 1,000 times less mass, 1,000 times less impact, 1,000th of its potential, waiting to blossom for the right environment. And because human beings and their spirits and their presence and guides and all that is so there waiting to help, a lifetime of torture and abuse overcome by 15 minutes a day. That's the environment in which she needed to spend 2 to 6 hours a day applying the medicine, which is part of the medicine. A healing protocol that does not empower the patient, first of all, to realize, which is in most cases the truth, that they are not sick, they're in a sick environment. It's the first step of healing. You are not sick. You have been infected by a toxic ecology. You are not the crazy one. You have been infected by an insane ecology. It's not natural. It's synthetic. It's made by dissociated egos in terror, trauma, and pain that it's so terrified and traumatized and in pain around, it's denying that it's in terror and trauma and pain. I mean, it's you've got, and that's the consciousness that's defined the social environment that you've been infected by. That's the first insight of healing. It's not you. You're carrying a disease that was given to you, and it needs to be given back. You need to understand the difference between who you are and the disease. That's the break. That's when you become an adult. I'm not my parents. I'm not my community. I'm not my country. I'm not my culture. And ultimately, I'm not just my species. I am a being present here for a moment in time for some specific reasons that are uniquely relevant to me. And no one else has anything to say to that. No one else has the right to define what those reasons are. They have the right to protect their egos. They have a right to do their influence in the best way that they can. But no one who we are. And we cannot see who we are until we are willing to take those mantles and those diseases, those programmed filters away, layer by layer by layer. And what's left is who we are. Then there's the question, the partnership, the chance to partner with our egos that have learned the language and are present in this environment, and the self that is timeless, the self that is here, the self that exists elsewhere. Who do we want to be? What laws will we obey, and why? Someone wounded and traumatized in some ways is closer to their self because they're already being rejected so forcefully from the world and the culture. So forcefully pushed back from where they came from. That they're closer to waking up from the simulation, from the dream, from the illusion that this is all there is here. And ironically, it's an irony my ego is not at all at peace with. That's the only place we can truly be of service from. And it's this being in Peter, it's this being in Anne, that I am in partnership with. On an ego level of panic and dissociation and all of that. On a human level of sadness and grief and witnessing. The agendas and patterns, the blind spots are our enemy. Your enemy, my enemy, Hai's enemy, Peter's enemy. But the presence that wants to come through, the mission, the purpose, the self that is Peter, is our ally, is something that I see as very, very beautiful. Something that I respect. And one of the many layers of frustration and confusion for the ego self, having to navigate in this world within time and space, is figuring out, particularly when the ego is playing its hiding game, just how to intersect with the coping strategy, basically, and not get infected by the coping strategy and actually connect with the self. And it's at this level of purpose that all of this that has taken place is on time, is on schedule, is, the way I see it, a crude, poorly formed rendition of an important mission. In other words, that 747 landing is the true essence of self coming into the body. After being terrorized and traumatized and attacked and scared out of its wits and confused and this and that, so that the ego self is pushing that self away frantically for a lifetime as a way of surviving, because that's the only way it gets any peace with the people and egos around it who can't process that complexity, that perception, that sensitivity, that seeing. I've always known that my parents were much happier with a cartoon rendition, however distorted and ugly of me, than me. That they were very, very, very scared and upset by who I was, and would bribe me handsomely if I pretended I was not that. The trouble is when the pretense goes on so long and I forget who I am. I mean, that's the trouble, and that's the sadness. Of course, the sadness really is that they weren't really afraid of me. They were afraid of the fact that this me can see them. And they were afraid of seeing the pain that is the gap between who they are and who I am, who they are, and the life they are living. Because the self is the light that projects through the projector. The ego defines the image. And it's a crude and hollow image. When it's a crude and hollow image, when it's an ugly image, that light illuminates the ego's delusions and distorted shapes. But there's still so much light in everything. It just needs to be unmasked, freed from the shape, and given a more graceful vessel. This was the aborted mission with Peter Sandhill, to co-create a more graceful vessel. And yet to do that required more skill, more integrity, more respect than Peter has for this part of himself, than he has for this part of me. And to do that required more grace and more respect than my ego has for this part of Peter or this part of me. Pain and near-death experiences are a great teacher. And so my ego has fumbled around, let's run this direction until we crash, then let's run this direction until we crash, and then, we've got an opening in this direction. Okay, let's go there. And so my ego is learning, catching up, bumbling along, like all our egos. And yet our ego is our friend, it's our partner. It deserves the respect of the self. This self is not easy to hurt and not easy to distort. But the ego, very, very easy to get thrown off and confused. Our egos need an enormous amount of love and patience and humor and support and help to heal trauma and help to heal trauma. It's a beautiful experience, one of my greatest joys, to watch this young woman grow. And the protocol, when you're assisting, when you're serving, is to always teach someone to fish, not maintain the dependency. And so one of the things that I was fighting, I guess my ego was fed up with it, was, nobody's giving me stuff to do. I'm just paying tens of thousands of dollars to share my problems, and people are saying, like, well, fuck you. I could have said that myself. And yet, someone needs diagnosis and medicine, and they need a path. They need an insight. Like, this seems to be who you are. I created a business for this young woman because she said she was interested in this, and this. And I was annoyed when she started resisting. But the problem wasn't her. The problem wasn't her resistance. The problem was she didn't know herself enough to know how to respect who she was. And so the solution was not to have her plow through it and tough it out and, become a Marine. The process was to destroy that business. Just dissolve it. The business is there to serve the person, not the other way around. It's the biggest joke around in a capitalist mentality. The business is there to serve the people, not the other way around. The business isn't serving her, it's creating resistance. Okay, you destroy the business. And then you look, where is that person wanting to grow? Where are they going? Aha. You don't like doing this, you're doing that. Okay? Let's create a new business to support that. Now there's no resistance. Aha, you're in alignment with yourself. Great. Do that. And growing continues. Business is important in our culture just because nobody will do anything without money, which is a little bit of a joke, as if we can't have the intelligence to see value on our own. We don't need money in many, many situations to do the right thing. It's just a symbol of value. Real value is one presence in human being and spirit, seeing something valuable in another. That is innate. That's priceless, whether you give them $1 million or a penny or nothing. It's priceless. And you support that. Because when we do that, we're supporting ourselves. To destroy the goodness in another human being for some delusion of the human agenda is to destroy ourselves. And the biggest crime that a culture does is it sanctions forms of self-destruction and destroying one another. With the trick of language, it says capitalism is good, therefore business is good, therefore we have to do what's good for business, because that's good. And this is what's good for business, so that's good. Now you should do this. Well, that's hurting this person. Well, that's how business is run. You got to do it. Go hurt them then. I mean, it's obvious. Business is good. Who said anything about hurting and not? That's just life. We just got to hurt people. That's a joke. That's how culture deludes its people into tearing themselves apart. Well, I got to drink because that feels miserable. Well, let's destroy ourselves so that we can numb out when we destroy other people. That's not intelligent. But we're not at choice to even question and see most of this until we deal with our own trauma. Because when a culture is there with a knife threatening to induce our deepest dreads and fears, if we don't do what we're told, we have no freedom. We will delude ourselves and just say, okay, what I'm doing is good. I'll do what you say, culture. But it's not good. We end up more and more separate from this self that's visiting for this time. Visiting this body in this dimension for this time. For the purpose of being of service, of loving, of caring enough about human beings to see them and help who they are come out. That's the joy. And this is the real value. This is the real gift within High. When High does that, there is a musical symphony of value and beauty that is released. It's profound. And when High doesn't do that, it's just grunge of going through the motions and money and this, and it's a slog for everyone, and there's no music. It's just drudgery. And the self is not interested in money. It's interested in service. And navigating the reality enough to do that. In all this pain, in all this trauma, in all of the journey necessary to respond to the pain and the trauma, the awakening. See, consciousness is so versatile. It's so beautifully versatile. You know, I asked Peter to help bring this in, to honor and provide a graceful thing, and he ran away. So then I raged and flailed around and hurt myself and this and that and the other. And in the process, there's one part in all that banging and flailing around that feels beautiful and true, and I get to know it in all that flailing around. And so it emerges anyway. And this is really a testament to our humanity, that this is who we are and this is how we're built. And it's good news. It's good news. Because you're not going to become who you are because you've got an intelligent culture, because you've got a good therapist, because you've got this, that, and the other. I mean, yes, that increases the probability field, but if we were truly dependent on that, we'd all be fucked. It does influence things about 90%, but we've got a 10% innate odds in our favor. The odds are slanted 10% in our favor just because of who we are. 90% is environment. But the environment is about 50-50. We've got about 50% of just about anything that's incredibly toxic, poisonous, delusional, sick, and all that. And we got about 50% that is okay to reasonable. And then about a small percent that's really, of that 50% that's really great. And a small percent of the other 50% that's really evil and toxic. And we're in this 50-50 playing field. But then who we are gives us a slant that if we bet 100 times, 60% of them, there is the opportunity to win, the opportunity. And I've been looking at data about engagement and disengagement because many Americans see all the threats that could come with engagement, and so they're isolated. And they're all true. All the threats they see are true. But the fact is that the biggest danger is disengagement. We're at far greater risks to not living a meaningful life of any kind, of dying early, of getting sick and all that, if we don't engage with all the sickness within the reality. Engaging in relationships, which are at least 50% dysfunctional, is healthier than having no relationship. Doing our best to love and be loved in all the fucked up ways that human beings love and be loved is better than not. It's a little bit like being in the stock market. There's 1,000 reasons not to be in the stock market or to be invested. And yet, the people who get hurt the most put their money under the mattress. Despite all the crazes, the average return is 10% over 100 years. Average. 10%. With all the ups and downs. Which means it's safer to be in the market than out of the market. It's safer to be in love than out of love. It's safer to be fighting with fucked up people than in complete dissociation. It's safer to be speaking than to be silent. I feel immense threat when I open my voice. I've got internal and external forces saying, don't say any of this stuff. Don't say it. If you say nothing, you won't be attacked. It's true. So why say it? Because the odds, 50% attack, 50% support, but there's 10% in my favor. It's kind of like a wild card, 10%, because I learn from the attacks, I learn who my enemies are, I learn from my support, I get practice speaking, I learn who I am. So even if nobody else gets it that time, or the people who get it don't bother telling me they got it, and the people that didn't get it all complain, and my ego has a fit because I'm rejected and traumatized yet again. And then I learn more about trauma and how much we need each other as human beings. I've learned a lot in this process. So then, would I have been better just doing nothing for this whole time rather than do this process? It's hard to say. But what I'm absolutely sure is that given that I was traumatized, given that I was hurt, given that I was lied to, given that I was shamed, given that I was rejected, that speaking, writing, and trying to be of service and help myself and others has been very, very, very important for my well-being, and possibly, we have to learn from impact based on impact, possibly for other people. And that's exciting, and I'm also, grateful for this technology, because I am someone. I learned that in level 2. I am someone, and I am just as valuable as anyone else, no more and no less. I'm someone, and I'm valuable. And so someone has been listening to this entire process. I have been looking into my eyes through the magic of phones. I have been looking into my eyes. I have been learning and learning to love and loving what I learn in this whole process. I have been listening. I have been seeing. I have been caring. And I matter, and you matter. The witness and the speaker both matter, and have a large degree of respect for one another in this body. I don't have another human being on this planet that I can meet in this way. It's largely cultural, in the way this country is absorbing all of its people and doing all this mindless stuff. And yet that matters. Just being here in this body, to have this self see this self, matters. And in that, I love, I heal, I grow, and I see significantly more than if I did not sit down to play, to write, to grow, to see. And when I grow, I touch the people around me. I help the people around me. It's like this young woman. I matter to her. I'm the only person who has cared enough about her, from parent to teacher to church to friend to schoolmate. I'm the only person who cares enough to see and to care. And I also know my own limitation, which is why my biggest joy is in establishing a link between her and her unseen friends, her unseen world, those presences that love her far better than I can ever love her. Because that's true liberation. When someone can access their inner guides, their inner lovers, their spirit, their sense of self, and all those loving beings that are standing in celebration and beauty of who that woman is, that's when she's free. That's when she doesn't need me. That's when she doesn't need anyone else. That's when she becomes an adult. I think our biggest challenge when we reach this stage is there's one part of us who knows this, and there's another one lost in a maze of loneliness, pain, web, shame, and fear that's willing to do anything to please the culture, including imprison itself in delusions and lies. And of course, it's not the self that sees. It's not the self that knows and is connected that needs help. That part is never sick. But our relationship with that part can be so weakened and obscured by all the shame and terror infected and directed at us that our relationship with ourself can be very sick. And in so doing, our relationship with everyone else becomes very sick. And that brings us back to the greatest compassion and human challenge of all, which is how to love this true self in another human being, which is often the opposite of its coping mechanism, and not overwhelm and traumatize the ego in doing so by destroying the coping mechanism before the ego has a way to restore relationship with itself without going into a psychotic tailspin because of an overwhelming trauma. And that's where we need each other. That's where we need each other. That's where we need trauma circles, trauma support groups, trauma buddies, someone we care about, someone we serve and love enough to be there for them in their christening, in their blossoming, in their awakening into who they are. Psychedelics can help, but only in the right healing environment. Only for people with the wisdom and love to put that love into attention to detail, into attention to seeing, into attention to being of service, into owning all the garbage we bring into the space, all the hostility, terror, rage, hate, fear, that is part of our dis-ease that we carry for this world until we leave it. To own it, that this is ours for now. It's not the beauty that is you. It's not the beauty of the one who is awakening. It is ours for now. To let them have that vision of their magnificence as they come into this world. Be born as who they are, sovereign in their being. This is a potential that less than 10% of our human species will experience in this lifetime. And it could get easily down to 5%. We may be able to bring it up to 10%. We may reduce it to almost nothing. You know, this is our human choice. To some extent, it is our choice what we want to make our life about. I've gotten clear for myself that this is what I'm interested in. for the remainder of this life. So I have a 10-year frame of kind of creating a cocoon in which I can be of service in this way. How to do it? What technology do I need? And of course, my government and social and culture are all against this, not actively, it's just by default. It's like, this requires enormous presence, patience, and skill. We're going to take everyone's time up with nonsense. This requires great security and safety. We're not going to make you safe. We're going to terrorize you with this and that and arbitrary this and harass you with taxes and this. Who knows what else? Requires a serene place of beauty. Well, we're going to jam everything with Wi-Fi and violent images and this and that and the other. Requires a sacred space. And so that's the garden that I'm working with. It's the garden that I hurt the most to have failed miserably relative to the impulse and relatively to the dream. I'm living 5% of that dream, and it's the most important thing, which is one reason I want to die. But doing this part of me doesn't want to die. Doing this is exciting and gives far more energy. Doing all kinds of things exhausts me. Doing this gives me so much joy and energy. It's amazing. And watching it with this young woman gives me hope. Because if 15 minutes of support in the right way a day, and her willingness to grow and allow in that love and experience it, and our innate need and desire to love and to connect with who we are is that strong, there is hope for all of us, because we can all afford to give someone 15 minutes a day. And we can all learn and grow when someone loves us enough to see and track how we're doing and give us suggestion. How about this? Not one of those little quick fix things without even letting you finish your sentence, but actually reading, listening, watching, ongoing dialogue. We don't need professionals. I don't think there is a single healer or therapist that I have ever met that I could have sent her to who would have helped her as much as one human being caring enough to see, respond, and give her the opportunity to grow and do most of the work, and thus celebrate her own beauty in knowing that. It's always a gift to let people help themselves. But they need the key. You can't just have someone heal trauma without knowing what it is. Someone has to care about them enough to see that they have it, that it's at least likely, and then know the book and then recommend it. And then they have to hear, how's it going? Well, I can't read, I'm too dissociated. Okay, did you know it's available on audio? Oh no, I'll get it there, okay. Oh, now how's it going? I'm listening to it and it's very helpful. Or I'm listening to it and I'm arguing with it. Aha. What's the argument? Well, I want to be doing something more physical. Can you go out jogging while you listen to it? I never thought about that, but let me try. I don't have any device for that. Here, you can download it on your phone on this app and you can have here. It's a dialogue. It's not a quick fix. It's a dialogue. And really what's happening is the light and love between two people caring enough to see and be seen is what's happening. And the noise of a book and this and that, it's just the structure into which that love is occurring. That's it for now. Thank you for being here with me. La 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 la. Oh, 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 oh. La 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 la. La 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 la.